Some things slip further away. This isn't just an everyday observation. It's a deep psychological truth in Carl Jung's work, where actions born from fear, scarcity, and resistance are symptoms of an unconscious yet to be brought to light. Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." When we fight loneliness, we only embed it deeper. When we try to run from the feeling of being unloved, that very feeling repeats itself in future relationships like a fateful cycle. This is how both the personal and collective unconscious operate. They do not forget. They wait to be seen and understood. In analytical psychology, Jung believed the unconscious is not merely a storehouse of forgotten memories or repressed emotions. It is also a subtle energy field that reflects the frequency of our inner life. When you act from a fear of abandonment, you don't just push others away with anxiety and control. You also emit a frequency that makes others feel burdened. That's why those who constantly need love often end up in superficial relationships or are repeatedly abandoned. The universe, in all its intricacy, doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you transmit. And what you transmit isn't your words, but the deep energy you often don't realize you're carrying. Picture a familiar scene. Someone sends a message, waits for a reply, sees nothing, then sends another. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're driven by the fear of being forgotten. The lack of response isn't just because the other person is busy. It's because they feel an invisible pressure, a pull into the frequency of lack. That fear makes every action feel heavy and turns connection into obligation. Jung would call this a form of shadow projection, when the ego hasn't accepted the inner shadow, insecurities, unhealed wounds, and so it projects those parts onto others, onto relationships, onto reality itself. This doesn't just happen in love. It plays out in work, money, and every area of life. Someone who always feels financially lacking acts out of fear of losing money, from the mindset of, I don't have enough, and so no matter how much they earn, they're constantly anxious, afraid, and slowly losing it. The paradox is, someone who lives from a state of, I already have enough, even if they don't have much, tends to attract more easily, because they transmit the energy of trust and abundance, not anxiety. Jung emphasized, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You'll think you're unlucky, but it's a direct reflection of your inner world. And this is where Jung's concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, appears as something sacred and guiding. Synchronicity doesn't happen when we try to control reality with sheer will, but when our inner world begins to balance, harmonize, and accept. That's when we step out of control and resistance and into a state of, I am present, I am enough, I don't need to force anything. At that point, a chance meeting, a seemingly random opportunity, or a vague signal suddenly becomes a perfect piece in the puzzle of your life. As Jung wrote in Synchronicity, a causal connecting principle. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Only when you stop trying to control will you truly see meaningful coincidence. The story of a young woman illustrates this clearly. She used to constantly seek reassurance in love. She would text frantically, panic, if her partner didn't reply right away. She believed she was only lovable if someone stayed. But after repeated heartbreak, she entered therapy, where she began to see. The core of her not enough feeling stemmed from childhood, when her emotions were neglected by her parents. That wound silently directed her every action. When she started accepting her inner abandoned self, she began talking to it instead of running, and she no longer needed someone else to fill the void. She became calmer, quieter, no longer desperate for love. And strangely, not only did her ex try to come back, but new relationships began to emerge, gentle, natural, without strain. Synchronicity appeared. She met a spiritual teacher just when she needed guidance. She received a new job offer right after releasing the fear of needing to earn a lot to feel worthy. This wasn't luck. It was a new frequency, and the universe was responding. If you're living in a state of not enough, pause and ask yourself, what are you trying so hard to hold on to? What are you so afraid of losing that you've forgotten who you are? Because every time you act from fear, you're telling the universe, I don't have. And the universe, like a mirror, does nothing but reflect exactly what you believe to be true. Remember, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. When you become peaceful, full, and no longer emit the frequency of lack, you don't need to chase anything. What is right for you will find its way. Synchronicity is the universe's response to energetic integrity within you, and that integrity only comes when you stop resisting what is and begin living from a place where nothing is needed to make you worthy. Number 2. The metaphor of the cage and the wild bird. This is the strange paradox of inner life. The more you pull back from attachment, the more you let go of control. The not integrated with the self, always lives in fear. Fear of losing, of lacking, of being unseen. So it constantly reaches out, tries to hold, to control, to reassure itself that I still have what I need. But ironically, that very act is poison. You cannot keep anything alive by gripping it. Only when you allow it freedom does it choose to stay. Love, admiration, opportunity, even dreams, they're all wild birds. Now imagine the opposite. You sit down. You don't move toward it. Don't try to control it. You simply exist, full, grounded, calm, like an ancient rock in the forest. The bird feels no pressure. It begins to approach. It lands on a branch nearby. You don't need to reach. It comes on its own. At this point, you've created what's often called a magnetic field, an energy not born from effort, but from resonance. Jung didn't use that term, but he described it as the process of individuation, the moment the ego stops struggling to be accepted and begins merging with the authentic self. Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming oneself. 2 essays on analytical psychology. At that point, you no longer need to chase anyone or anything because you become the radiant center of your being. When the ego stops resisting, stops fearing loss, the self, the true essence, begins to shine. Not dazzling like a spotlight, but quietly like a sacred inner flame. It's the kind of light that makes others feel your presence, drawn to you not because you're seeking attention, but because you're still, yet real. This is the kind of energy Jung described in Man and His Symbols. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And once you become that, there is nothing left to prove. That is the most powerful attraction of all. Thomas's story, a young artist who struggled for recognition, illustrates this clearly. He lived in fear that he wasn't good enough, different enough, valuable enough. He kept applying, joining exhibitions, trying to please curators and crowds, but the cycle repeated. Rejection, disappointment, more striving, all from a place of lack. One day he stopped, not out of hopelessness, but exhaustion. He began painting for himself, needing no one's approval. He returned to the original voice inside. Strangely, those works, raw, honest, and deep, started getting attention. A gallery reached out. An unexpected interview arrived. He was no longer chasing, because he had shown up. His self had stepped into the light. Jung once said, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. When you stop struggling, you light that flame, and that light can guide not just you, but everything seeking a place to anchor." The metaphor of the cage and the wild bird isn't just a poetic image, it's a symbol. In Jung's language, it is an archetype, a deep, primal expression of how humans interact with beauty, love, and life. The more we try to possess, the more we lose. The more we allow freedom, the more we attract. You don't need to be someone special to be loved. You only need to return to yourself, and that is something that can't be captured, can't be replaced. And it's from that state that the universe begins to synchronize with you. You no longer have to hold anyone back. What belongs with you will stay, not because you clutched it, but because it chooses to stay. And you, no longer reaching out to grasp, finally become the one the world can't help but notice. Number 3, how to become unreachable. If the previous section was a mirror reflecting the paradox between possession and freedom, This next part is an invitation to go deeper. How do you live in a way that you no longer chase, yet still draw the world toward you? How do you become unreachable, not through cold detachment or artificial withdrawal, but through true inner power, the kind of energy that makes you no longer need to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself? Becoming unreachable doesn't mean closing your heart, acting superior, or disconnecting from people. On the contrary, it's the state of someone who has found themselves so deeply that they are no longer pulled by the thirst to be loved, validated, or picked. In Jung's vocabulary, this is the journey from the chaotic ego to the self, the pure, whole, and complete essence. And that journey begins with a step few want to take: facing the shadow. The shadow, according to Jung, is the dark part of ourselves we refuse to accept. It might be feelings of weakness, the fear of abandonment, or the longing to be saved by someone else. As long as you refuse to look at it, you'll keep projecting it onto the world and keep falling into relationships that make you feel not enough. Jung wrote in Psychology and Religion, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." To become truly strong, you don't reject your vulnerability, you face it, embrace it, and stop letting it silently run your life. From there, you enter a unique phase Jung called the night sea journey, the journey across the sea in the dark. It's lonely, uncertain, and without a map. This is the moment you stop clinging to anyone for support, when all control dissolves, and you're left to pass through your omnipotence. Many give up at this point, thinking they're lost. But the truth is, this is where your self begins to take shape. Beneath the waves of confusion lies the core of a person breaking free from dependency. Have you ever gone through a night sea journey? A time when you thought you'd lost everything, but in truth, you were shedding what never truly belonged to you. Leave a comment. Your story might be the light someone else needs in their darkest hour. When you go deep enough into that journey, something becomes unmistakably clear. You don't need to become like anyone else. Don't need anyone's approval. Don't need to chase a template to be worthy. That's when you move closer to the self, the true you. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming oneself, and insofar as individuality to expectations, and stop surrendering your truth just to be loved, you become irreplaceable. A person's magnetism doesn't come from trying to be cool or hard to get. It comes from the clarity of their inner frequency. They know who they are. They don't compromise. They don't bend just to be kept. And because of that, they become a natural center of gravity. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't need you, and that is power. Becoming unreachable isn't a dating tactic. It's a state of awareness. You no longer live to be chosen. You live to preserve your inner space and to attract only what truly resonates with it. Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." This expands beyond family. The greatest tragedy of a person is living a life where they never truly became themselves. When you pause, listen, and turn inward, you're doing the opposite. You begin to live. And then the miracle happens. Without effort, without proving anything, the universe begins to respond. The right relationships appear. Opportunities flow like water. The things that once felt out of reach now come to you. Not because you're better, but because you are more yourself than ever before. That is the energy of someone who no longer needs to be chosen, because they have chosen themselves. And that is what makes them unreachable, not in distance, but in depth. Not someone the world can grasp, but someone it can't help but move toward. Number 4. When your energy changes, the world begins to reflect it. What begins to change is not the world itself, but how the world responds to you. Carl Jung had a simple yet powerful principle: as within, so without, meaning the world outside reflects exactly what's inside you. This isn't some mystical law of attraction, nor a spiritual gimmick. It's a profound psychological truth. The universe doesn't react to what you say, it resonates with what you are. Imagine yourself as an energetic mirror. When what's inside you is anxiety, doubt, or a sense of lack, your experiences and the people around you will only reinforce that feeling. But when you begin living from a different frequency, no longer driven by the need to have to feel whole, but simply being as a complete source of energy, the world starts to align with you. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that don't follow linear cause and effect, but instead arise from energetic harmony between person and circumstance. You stop trying to run into someone, and one day, they unexpectedly message you. You're no longer fixated on a certain opportunity, and an email arrives from a stranger, opening a new door. You stop praying to be loved, and someone walks into your life, not to save you, but to grow alongside you. Synchronicity is the universe whispering, "I am listening to your energy." And that energy can't be faked. Only when you stop chasing the familiar cycle of want, need, strive, do you become the exception the world can't ignore. You might ask, but if I stop being proactive, won't I miss opportunities? That's a valid question. But Jung didn't teach you to stop acting. He taught you to stop acting from fear. You can still write the letter, go to work, invite someone out for coffee, but not from the need to fill a void. You act because you want to show up fully, not because you can't bear the feeling of being unseen. And that's the difference between action that attracts and action that repels. The story of a young man illustrates this well. For years, he worked like a machine, striving to be recognized, praised, and retained. He burned out. He began a journey inward. He stopped sending out resumes blindly, stopped forcing himself to fit corporate culture, and started working on small personal projects he truly loved. During that time, no one reached out. But after 3 months, an old friend who had seen his work referred him to a job he'd never even considered. But that fit him perfectly. "I'm not looking for work anymore," he said. "It's like the work found me." Have you ever experienced synchronicity? A meeting, an opportunity, or a turning point that arrived just when you stopped trying to force things. Share that story. It might help someone else realize they're not alone on this path. What's fascinating is, when you're in the right frequency, you no longer want something. You attract it. Not through strategy, but through presence. Love arrives when you stop begging to be loved. Success flows in when you stop straining to deserve it. You don't need to impress anyone. You only need to live from yourself, and that alone creates a natural field of attraction. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung described a long period where he withdrew from public life and lived alone in a wooden house near Lake Bollingen. There, he didn't write to be recognized, didn't analyze to influence. He simply listened to dreams, took notes, touched stone, and had quiet conversations with his inner darkness. And it was during that time that his most profound ideas, archetypes, the collective unconscious, and individuation began to take form. When he stopped doing things for others, he finally touched something humanity would later need. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to become quiet enough for your frequency to speak. The world doesn't revolve around you because you force it to. It revolves because you become a center of gravity, unmoving, unneeded, but powerful like a magnet. Worth instead of believing, I already have it. Have you ever asked yourself that question? If so, share it below. Sometimes, one person brave enough to ask is enough to shine a light for others on the same journey. From that moment, Elena began pulling her energy back inward. She stopped being the first to text. Not out of pride, but because she no longer needed immediate responses to validate her meaning. She no longer spent time explaining silence. Instead, she listened to the quiet within herself. Slowly, from someone who was always waiting, she became the one others waited for. Not just exes came back, friends, colleagues, even people who had once been indifferent, now wanted to reconnect. But the most surprising part, she didn't need them anymore. And it was in the moment she no longer needed them that her energy changed. Elena no longer emitted the frequency of pleading or longing to be loved. She radiated the energy of someone who had come home to herself. Carl Jung described this as the moment when the ego stops resisting and begins to merge with the self, the truest archetypal essence within every human being. And when Elena touched the self, she was no longer the one waiting to be chosen. She became the chooser. No longer revolving around anyone else, she aligned fully with the orbit of her being. She became unattainable, unreachable, not because she played hard to get, but because she had become whole. And people were drawn to her like moths to flame, not to possess her, but to touch something authentic, quiet, and untouchable. Do you see it? When Elena stopped chasing, stopped emitting the frequency of "I need," she opened a space for the right things to come. And that wasn't just an internal victory, it was a real energetic shift. Nothing can replace a person who knows their worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. Elena didn't become unreachable because she hid herself. She became unreachable because she showed up fully and stopped running away from herself. But Elena is not the only example. In what seems like the opposite world, the fast-paced realm of logic, ambition, and success, the same awakening is possible. A young entrepreneur once rose quickly, but always felt the need to prove himself. He lived in a grind of results, goals, and deadlines, not from passion, but from fear of failure, fear of being left behind. But after losing everything in one failed investment, it all collapsed. For the first time, he sat still, not to plan, but to listen. In the silence of failure, he began to touch a hidden truth. All this time, he hadn't built a career from inner strength, but from the fear of being dismissed, a shadow left unhealed from a childhood full of comparisons and impossible expectations. He began reading Jung, learning to sit with himself, to meditate, to write, not to become someone, but simply to be himself. And strangely, just when he no longer needed success to feel worthy, he began attracting the right opportunities. Collaborations came naturally, money returned, but this time it carried no pressure. Only peace, truth, and grounded strength. Number 6. Practice. How to reprogram your frequency. As Carl Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, the self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. The true self is not just a still point deep within the psyche, it is the full circle of living energy that encompasses both what you know and what you've never dared to face. When you live from the ego, you act from lack, from fear, from a hunger to be validated. But when you return to the self, you no longer need to become anything. You simply are, and the world no longer has the power to define you. So how do you get there? How do you move from "I need to be chosen" to "I have chosen myself"? There's no shortcut, but there is a direct path, inward. Reprogramming your frequency doesn't start by changing others. It starts by changing what you allow. The first step is to face everything you've accepted, even though deep down you knew you shouldn't have. Write down the relationships that made you shrink, the texts you sent hoping to be validated, and the situations where you stayed silent to avoid upsetting someone. When you write it down, you stop being a passive victim. You begin doing what Jung called making the unconscious conscious, bringing the shadow into the light. And when the light arrives, your energy begins to return to you. Next, redefine yourself not by your desires, but by your identity. Instead of saying, "I want to be loved," write, "I am someone who only welcomes healthy love." Instead of, "I want to be respected," affirm, "I am someone who sets clear standards and does not compromise on what harms me." This is a shift from living as a victim to living as a sovereign being, from being chosen to choosing yourself. Jung once wrote in The Undiscovered Self, put reminders on your mirror. Journal every morning. Repeat your affirmations like a ritual. I don't need to be chosen. I have chosen myself. At first, you might not believe it. But as Jung once said, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Belief doesn't lead, action does. And when action is repeated, it becomes a new belief, a new identity, and a new reality. And one day you'll wake up and realize you no longer need someone to call you to feel worthy. You no longer react to distance. You no longer panic when someone leaves. You are calm. You are whole. You no longer need to be seen because you have already seen yourself from within. And in that state, no one can control you. No one can manipulate you with praise or silence. You don't need to make anyone stay, because those who match your frequency will stay, and those who don't will dissolve on their own. Becoming unreachable isn't a strategy. It's the natural result of having become whole. When you live from that place, you're no longer chasing the spotlight. You are the light. And for that reason alone, everything that's right for you will have no choice but to find its way to you. And after all, Jung said something that strikes at the very core of each of our life journeys. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. How many times in life have you asked, why does this keep happening to me? That is the moment your unconscious is speaking to you through the language of circumstance. Nothing is random. There is only energy that has yet to be recognized, yet to be transformed, and so it repeats, waiting to be seen, confronted, and transcended. As long as you're chasing, you're emitting the frequency of lack. When you're trying to prove you're worthy, you're quietly telling the universe you are not. But when you stop chasing love, stop seeking validation, stop bending yourself to be kept, you begin to create space. And within that space, what you once believed you had to fight for arrives on its own. as if it had always been there, simply waiting for you to return to the right frequency. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to the frequency you emit. And that frequency cannot be faked. It's built from every action you take in solitude, every boundary you enforce when no one is watching, every decision where you know if you go against yourself, you'll lose yourself again. The more you become your true self, the more irreplaceable you become, and the less you can be controlled. Because someone who has chosen themselves will never again need to be chosen by others to feel worthy. Synchronicity begins from within. The right opportunities, the right people, the right experiences, they only show up when you've become the person who can hold them without grasping. And that's when you no longer search for destiny, because you've become it. If something in these words touched a place in your heart, a truth you've tried to forget, a part of yourself that's been calling you back, then this isn't a coincidence. Allow yourself to step deeper into this path of awakening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every week, we'll bring you grounded insights drawn from Carl Jung, from the collective unconscious, from the path of individuation, and you, the one who is slowly returning to your authentic self. If you're ready to stop living in repetition and start living with awareness, this is where you belong. Have you ever found yourself in a room full of people and still felt completely alone? Ever lain beside someone and felt a hollow ache in your chest? Ever woken up, looked in the mirror, and wondered who you're living for? We've all been there, in places, with people, in roles that don't reflect who we truly are. And somehow, we learn to adapt, to accept less, to settle into the blur, to live with things that don't belong to us. But why? Why do we let ourselves shrink in a world so vast? If you love yourself, don't accept less than you deserve. Carl Jung. That's not just a quote. It's a confrontation with truth. Because loving yourself isn't a fleeting emotion. It's a conscious, courageous act. The willingness to pause, to turn inward, and to stop compromising with anything that obscures your true self. Real self-love begins the moment you stop betraying yourself, even in the smallest ways. So ask yourself, what part of you keeps saying yes to less? And how do you step beyond that cycle? This is the journey inward, where you meet yourself fully, and perhaps, for the first time, choose to be who you truly are. Number 1. The journey inward. 1. How did we learn to forget ourselves? No one is born knowing how to pretend. As children, we live in truth. We cry when it hurts, speak what we think, and love when we feel it. But growing up in a world shaped by expectations and conditions, we start to learn how to hide. We learn that anger makes adults uncomfortable, that sensitivity is labeled as weakness, and that speaking the truth might lead to rejection. So we begin to create an acceptable version of ourselves. Carl Jung called this the persona, the psychological mask we wear to fit into society. The persona isn't inherently bad. It helps us adapt, survive, and fulfill roles in the community. But the problem begins when we no longer know where the mask ends and where we begin. Jung wrote, "Persona is what oneself and others think one is, but the self is what one is." We spend our lives investing in roles: the good child, the dedicated employee, the loyal friend, the agreeable partner. Yet we rarely stop to ask whether those roles truly reflect who we are inside. The girl who always smiles, always helps, is called kind, but deep down, she feels drained and hurt from constantly giving without daring to receive. The quiet man praised for being strong lies awake at night, anxious and afraid to admit he needs comfort. The longer we wear the mask, the further we drift from the self, our true essence, where raw emotions, instincts, creative potential, and the intuition that guides real growth all reside. Jung believed that one of the deepest roots of modern crisis isn't material lack, but the loss of connection with the self. We chase approval, grades, achievements, but feel empty inside. When life becomes nothing more than a response to the external, with nothing reflecting from within, we begin to feel lost. And in that moment, when we quietly ask ourselves, "Is this still me?" a seed of awakening is planted. 2. What does accepting less really reveal? When you accept less than what you deserve, it's not simply a bad decision. It's not a sign of weakness, lack of intelligence or willpower, as many people might assume. According to Carl Jung, it's not an act of logic, but the result of a belief deeply rooted in the unconscious. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve better. Jung called the root of these limiting beliefs the shadow, the dark part of the psyche we tend to avoid, deny, or aren't even aware of. The shadow is not evil, nor simply the bad parts of us, as commonly misunderstood. Jung defined it as everything inside you that has been rejected, repressed, or deemed unacceptable for the version of yourself you've tried to maintain. The shadow can be anger, jealousy, craving, weakness, but it can also be the desire to be loved, confidence, ambition, creative passion, and all the things you were once taught you shouldn't have. Imagine a child who's sensitive, lively, curious, and expressive, but every time they cry, their parents scold them. Stop crying. Be strong. Every time they get angry, adults criticize them. You're being bad. You can't behave like that. And whenever they show their uniqueness, someone might coldly say, "Who do you think you are?" Gradually, the child learns to suppress all those emotions. They stop crying, stop expressing, stop believing they can stand out. They become well-behaved, easygoing, pleasant, but inside, a part of them has been locked away. And that part is the shadow, quietly forming silently, but real. As they grow up, that child, now an adult, may become someone who constantly puts others first, who avoids conflict at all costs, who doesn't know how to say no, even when they're exhausted. They may stay in relationships without love, keep jobs that don't fit them, or always feel guilty for prioritizing their own needs. None of this comes from the log. It stems from an unconscious belief shaped early on. I am only loved when I cause no trouble. I must endure to be worthy. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is a powerful wake-up call. So many people believe what they go through in life is because of fate, bad luck, or because life just doesn't go my way. But Jung points to a more sobering truth. It's often the unconscious parts of yourself, the ones you refuse to see, that are drawing in, shaping, and keeping you stuck in the very circumstances you blame on the outside. For example, someone repeatedly finds themselves in relationships where they're disrespected, dominated, or dismissed. They change partners, change environments, but the pattern repeats. It's possible that deep down, they still hold the belief, I'm not good enough, I have to work harder to be loved. And the shadow, the rejected self, keeps leading them into similar situations, repeating the lesson until they dare to stop and ask, what am I believing about myself? Why does this feel normal to be treated this way? Another example, you're offered a promotion, a scholarship, or introduced to someone genuinely kind, and your first reaction is, they must have made a mistake. I'm not that good. That is your shadow speaking. It doesn't shout. It doesn't make noise. It whispers. And because it has lived inside you for so long, you've mistaken it for logic. But it's not. It's the voice of a wounded part of you, long ignored, now silently holding you back from fully living. Accepting less is how the shadow operates. It keeps you clinging to the small because you don't believe you deserve more. It makes you turn away from the light because you were once judged for shining. It holds you inside rotting relationships because a part of you fears, if I let go, nothing better will come. But the truth is, it's not the world working against you. It's you unconsciously repeating old patterns because no one ever taught you how to love yourself properly. Jung never promoted self-love as a catchy slogan. For him, it was a serious journey that required the courage to face your shadow, not to criticize it, but to understand it, embrace it, and integrate it into your whole self. Only when you do that can you begin to break. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The issue isn't in the people or the circumstances. It's in the wounds within you that remain untouched, unrecognized, unreleased. Take, for example, a woman who grew up in an emotionally deprived family where she had to try hard just to be noticed by her parents. She learned that love means sacrifice, that to be loved, she must constantly strive. As an adult, she finds herself in one-sided relationships. She gives everything, while the other person is distant and careless. She knows it hurts, but she can't walk away, because part of her believes this is normal. What she doesn't realize is that she's not loving the man in front of her. She's trying to heal the incomplete emotions left behind by her parents through someone entirely unrelated. Or take a man who constantly feels inadequate, never successful enough. He switches jobs often, earns more degrees, and works harder than most. But no matter where he is, he always feels undervalued. The feeling of not enough follows him, no matter how high he climbs. Why? Maybe deep in his subconscious, he still carries the wound of a child who was compared, criticized, and told, "Is that all you've got?" And now, the outside world is simply mirroring back a belief that's lived in him for years. According to Jung, this is how the unconscious seeks awakening. These repeating patterns don't come to punish you, but to wake you up, to make you stop and ask, why does this keep happening to me? As long as you avoid facing the untouched pain within, life will keep placing you in similar situations, just with different names, different settings. Not so you suffer endlessly, but so you remember something about yourself that you've forgotten. And when you're finally brave enough to look at the pattern directly without blaming, without running, and simply admit, this is something in me that needs healing, that's when the cycle begins to dissolve. Number 2. The solution. Self-love is an act, not a slogan. 1. Facing the darkness and not running from it. Carl Jung never promised that healing would be easy. On the contrary, he described the journey back to the true self as a descent into darkness, where one must confront the parts of themselves they have forgotten, denied, or been taught to reject. According to Jung, only when we dare to face the darkness within can we truly begin the process of individuation, becoming whole, undivided. The question that begins this journey isn't, how do I get others to love me? But rather, what am I believing about myself that makes me accept this? It's a simple question, but a revolutionary one. It shifts the focus away from others, away from circumstances, and turns it inward to the place that truly needs exploring. Your shadow might be holding beliefs like, I'm not good enough for a healthy relationship. If I show who I am, they'll leave, or I have to work myself to exhaustion to be worthy. These beliefs don't arise randomly. They're shaped by early experiences, by your environment, by the words you once heard and held onto as truth. The problem is that we've believed them for so long, we forget they're just unconscious programs, not who we are. Jung didn't stop at theory. He offered ways to actively engage with the unconscious. One of the most powerful tools is journaling, not to record daily events, but to observe how your mind works. When you write without control or judgment, hidden thoughts begin to surface, and those words can reveal truths you've never seen before. Jung also emphasized the importance of dreams, which he called the gateway to the unconscious. Dreams are not just biological phenomena. They're symbolic language used by the unconscious to communicate with you. Every character, every setting, every emotion in a dream represents a part of yourself trying to speak. When you dream of being chased, perhaps you're running from a part of yourself. When you fall, maybe it's an invitation to let go of control. Recording your dreams, noticing repeating symbols, and reflecting on the emotions that come with them is a subtle but profound way to decode the messages of your inner world. In addition, Jung suggested a more intuitive and creative method of working with symbols through imagery, drawing, poetry, music, or seemingly pointless activities that allow the mind to express freely. He encouraged the practice of drawing mandalas, symmetrical circular designs, as a way to observe the movement of the self and restore inner order. For Jung, listening inwardly, not through logic, but through feeling, was essential. The core of this entire process is courage, not the kind needed to confront the outside world, but the courage to stop running from yourself. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Only when you are willing to touch the fear, the anger, the wounds, and the desires you once denied, do you begin to reclaim what was lost within you. And when you retrieve that broken piece, you don't become perfect, but you become whole. And from that wholeness, every choice in your life, in love, in work, in how you see yourself, begins to shift. 2. The practice of letting go to be reborn. Letting go sounds simple, but for many, it's one of the hardest things to do on the path to living true to oneself. Letting go of a relationship, a job, or a long-held self-image isn't just about losing something external. It's about facing the inner void, the space where we don't yet know what will come next. But according to Carl Jung, letting go isn't a loss. It's an essential part of inner rebirth. He called this stage nigredo, the black phase in psychological alchemy. It marks the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming whole, where a person must pass through darkness and dissolve what they once identified with to emerge more real and complete. In today's world, persistence is often glorified as the highest virtue, while letting go is seen as weakness or failure. But Jung saw it differently. He believed many people stay in pain, not because they have no choice, but because they cling to what's familiar. You see it everywhere. Someone knows their current relationship is draining, controlling, and makes them feel like a stranger to themselves, yet they stay, afraid of loneliness or starting over. Someone dreads every morning at a job that means nothing to them, yet they continue because the pay is steady, it's secure, or others don't even have jobs. Someone who was once vibrant and creative now lives small, afraid to dream again after past failures. All of these people have something in common. They're not living wrong, they're just afraid to let go, afraid to release what no longer belongs to them, afraid to shed old identities, familiar patterns, worn-out roles. Imagine a woman in a 6-year relationship with her college boyfriend. Everyone says they're the perfect couple, but inside, she feels herself shrinking. Her ideas, interests, and emotions aren't truly heard. She wants to end it, but thinks, this is better than being alone, or maybe he'll change, or starting over is exhausting. So she stays, year after year, not because she doesn't know she deserves better, but because she's afraid of the emptiness It's from the illusion you haven't released. They will change. When you let go of that illusion, you don't stop loving the man. You just stop tying yourself to an expectation that isn't real. Jung emphasized that in the process of individuation, letting go is what allows the self to rise. Without the death of the old ego, there can be no birth of the whole self. When you begin to release what no longer aligns, whether it's a relationship, a place, or a part of who you thought you were, you're clearing the ground for something new to take root. And don't mistake it. Letting go is not abandoning responsibility or giving up hope. On the contrary, it is the boldest act of love toward yourself. It's how you say, I choose what makes me feel alive, even if I don't fully know what that is yet. Letting go is decisive, but not harsh. It's surrender, but not loss. It's allowing the old to leave in peace, so the new can enter not forced, not feared, just the natural unfolding of a soul that is waking up. 3. Rebuilding from the roots. After you've dared to face the darkness and let go of what no longer serves you, an empty space opens up. But it's not meaningless emptiness, it's fertile ground, ready for reconstruction, this time not based on external expectations, but on your true inner values. This is where a new life begins, one no longer driven by fear of rejection, abandonment, or the need for approval, but by a clear sense of who you are and what truly matters to you. Carl Jung called this the process of uniting with the self, the deepest layer of being, where intuition, core values, and unconscious wisdom come together. He believed that only when the ego no longer controls everything can we begin to live with true presence from the inside out, no longer chasing recognition, status, or success defined by others, but choosing to live with personal meaning. One clear sign that you've begun to live from within is when your decisions are no longer based on fear of loss, but rooted in your sense of self. Where you once stayed silent to keep the peace, now you speak up because you value the truth. Where you once accepted a job out of fear of unemployment, now you say no because it no longer reflects who you are. Not because you've become more reckless, but because you've started trusting yourself. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But when that acceptance happens, your actions begin to carry a different energy, grounded, mature, and powerful." Living from inner values isn't just a vague feeling of being true to yourself. It shows up in concrete actions, like setting boundaries. If before you feared being seen as selfish when you said no, now you understand that saying no is an act of self-respect. When you stop saying yes just to please others, you make space for something more important: integrity. Take a simple example. Mary was someone who always said yes when people asked for help, even if it left her exhausted. She was afraid that saying no would make people think she didn't care. But after going through a period of burnout and disconnection, she started listening to her body, her emotions. For the first time, she said no to a weekend outing to rest. She felt guilty, but also relieved. That was a sign she was shifting from blind compliance to conscious choice. A crucial part of rebuilding is learning to sit with solitude and no longer run from it. Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." The truth is, when you start living authentically, some relationships will naturally fall away. People who fit your old version may find you different, even distant. But that's not a loss. It's natural refinement, and you must accept it as part of your spiritual growth. Many people fear solitude so much they cling to toxic relationships just to avoid facing themselves. But when you learn to sit in stillness, to hear your own voice, to feel your own presence, solitude is no longer your enemy, but a sacred space for reconnection. Picture a man named Jack, once working in finance. Each workday was a battle against himself. The job was high pressure, meaningless, competitive, but the pay was great. After losing a loved one, he began to ask, if I died tomorrow, would I have regrets? The answer was yes, a lot. Months later, he quit. Not because he had a perfect plan B, but because he knew staying meant continuing to betray himself. He moved to the countryside, learned farming, started a blog about slowing down. At first, no one understood. People said he was wasting his life, but he had never felt more alive. Every choice, from work to relationships, was now based on one question: does this reflect my true values? Jung believed that when a person begins to live from the self, they emit a new kind of energy, and that energy attracts what aligns. You don't have to chase love, hunt down opportunities, or convince others to understand you. When you live from values, you don't need to find your place. You shine exactly where you stand. And that's when synchronicity, your meaningful coincidences, start to unfold. Aligned relationships appear, new paths open, not because the world suddenly got better, but because your frequency shifted. You no longer emit signals of lack, fear, or attachment. You radiate freedom, presence, and a deep love for who you are. 4. Synchronicity and true change. There comes a strange moment in the journey of individuation. You stop trying to change your life, and life starts to change on its own. Not with noise or drama, but with subtle, quiet, deeply meaningful signs. A door opens the moment you stop needing it. A new friend appears just as you learn to release your loneliness. An opportunity arises after you dare to say no to what no longer fits. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. It's not random chance, but a reflection of inner-outer alignment. When you shift your internal frequency from fear to trust, from scarcity to sufficiency, from attachment to freedom, the outer world begins to reflect that shift. Jung believed the universe isn't a mechanical system of random events, but a living field of meaning, where symbols, intuition, dreams, and situations carry messages if you're awake enough to see them. And the beautiful truth is, you don't have to control the world. You only need to realign yourself. In all the years spent living through your persona, the social mask you learned to earn love through effort. You smiled at the right moments, stayed quiet when expected, showed just enough so you wouldn't be rejected, but never too much to fully be yourself. That kind of love came with conditions not imposed by others, but created by you, as you shrunk yourself to be deserving. But when you begin to live authentically, you stop trying to win affection. You radiate the energy of someone who knows their worth, and that becomes a quiet, magnetic force. For example, you may have once attracted relationships marked by control, where you felt the need to prove you were enough. But when you learn to love yourself, to set boundaries, and to live according to your values, you naturally lose interest in those dynamics. Even if they appear again, you recognize the signs early and walk away without repeating the cycle of pain. In return, you begin to meet others, maybe fewer, but deeper. People who don't find you too much when you're being real. People who listen not to reply, but to understand. People who stay, not because you fit their expectations, but because you're simply being you. Many mistake synchronicity for something that happens when you stay positive or constantly try to manifest good things with your thoughts. But Jung never described it as a magical technique. Instead, he emphasized that synchronicity arises when you are in harmony with the self, when you're no longer at war with yourself, when you accept both light and shadow, and live in alignment between what you feel and how you act. Imagine your inner world as a musical instrument. If the strings are slack with sorrow, attachment, or confusion, the sound that emerges will be out of tune, and life will echo it with distorted experiences. But when you retune yourself by facing your wounds, letting go, rebuilding, and setting boundaries, your inner sound begins to resonate clearly. And like a song played on the right frequency, the universe begins to hear you. A simple example. In the past, you may have repeatedly found yourself in vague, unclear relationships. You were the one always reaching out, waiting for a message, anxious about being left. But after doing the inner work, you begin to notice the signs of earlier emotional distance, lack of connection, and misaligned values. And you choose to step away, not because you're above it, but because your inner world no longer resonates with that kind of connection. And then, someone shows up, just when you're no longer searching. Not because you've suddenly become more attractive, but because you're finally ready to receive a completely different kind of connection, from a deeper level of consciousness. Synchronicity isn't a destination, it's a way of living, and you can practice it daily through small, specific steps. 1. Start the day by connecting within, not reacting. Instead of reaching for your phone the moment you wake up, spend 5 to 10 minutes tuning in. Breathe deeply. Notice what feelings are present. Write down a question to carry through your day. What do I need today to live in truth? Or, how would I act if I already felt whole? It may seem small, but this simple practice helps you set your frequency with intention, rather than being swept into reactivity, dragged by emails, messages, or others' words. 2. Journal symbols and dreams. Jung believed the unconscious is constantly communicating with us through dreams, images, and intuition. Each morning, try to jot down any fragments or visuals you remember from your dreams. Don't worry about analyzing them right away, just record. Over time, you'll begin to notice repeating symbols, quiet signals from the self, guiding you towards something deeper. If you don't recall a dream, note the most vivid emotion of your day. As you live in a deeper connection with yourself, you become more attuned to the small signs you used to miss. 3. Small actions, but aligned with your values. Every time you say no to something misaligned, whether it's an invitation, a relationship, or an opportunity that doesn't reflect who you are, you clarify your frequency. Every time you say yes to something that nourishes you, even if small, you send a clear message to the universe. I choose to live truthfully, and I'm ready to receive what aligns with that. Jung said, synchronicity happens when an outer event coincides meaningfully with an inner state, meaning not because you deserve more, but because you've become the person who can see and receive what life is offering. The most beautiful thing about this journey is you don't have to force your life to change. When you live authentically, release what no longer fits, rebuild from your truth, and act from your values, change happens naturally. And when it does, you stop fearing what's coming, because you trust what's unfolding within you. You no longer try to be loved. You begin to radiate an energy that makes others feel safe, inspired, and drawn in. You no longer fight for a place, you stand firm, because you've stopped trying to please everyone. You no longer argue to be understood, you choose silence when needed, because your truth already holds enough weight. When you live in synchronicity, you start to notice the small things. A friend messages you just when you're feeling lost. An opportunity arrives right after you've released something. A book accidentally falls into your hands that answers exactly what you've been questioning. Not because these things weren't always there, but because now you have the eyes to see them and the heart to receive them. This is where Jung's journey of individuation leads not to a successful ego, but to a whole human being, living in resonance with the frequency of their soul. And when that happens, you understand something deeply. You don't need to control your life. You just need to stop betraying yourself. The journey inward has never been an easy path. It isn't glamorous. There are no spotlights, no medals handed out when you walk away from a toxic relationship, turn down a safe job, or set a boundary for the first time in your life. But it marks the beginning of something profound. You choose yourself. If you truly love yourself, what are you willing to let go of today? An old belief that you're not enough, a relationship that no longer respects you, a lifestyle that's been pulling you away from who you are. The answer isn't out there, in other people or the world. It's within you, right now. You can keep living on autopilot, or you can pause and choose again. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And awakening doesn't mean reaching some distant, lofty state. It's the moment you quietly admit to yourself, "I used to accept less, but not anymore." Loving yourself isn't easy, but it is the first radical act toward living honestly and living fully. It's how you break